My toxic in-laws told me before the holidays that I was not part of their family. So my husband and I ditched them at the airport and traveled alone. A few days ago, my husband's family was preparing to go on their annual family vacation, a ritual they hold every year, where my in-laws get together, choose a destination, and take a week off. My husband is 30, I'm 30, and we just got married recently, but we had been together for 3 years before that. I first participated in this event a year before we got married, when he proposed to me, but his family didn't propose to me, which I found strange, so I refused. But this time my mother-in-law Sandra invited me to join them, which meant a lot to me. I felt that Sandra didn't like me before because she never made me feel welcome as a member of the family. She was always mean to me, just not as nice as she was to the others, and always a bit distant and cold towards me. I think one of the main reasons she didn't seem to like me was that when we started dating, my husband moved out of their house and started living with me. I think that from about that time on, her attitude towards me began to change, becoming increasingly cold. But obviously she couldn't bear to be on bad terms with me, so she hid it as much as she could, but I still sensed something. I knew that she didn't like the reason I became her son's roommate after he moved out of the family home. I'm very independent and have lived away from my parents since I went to university, so moving in with his parents was never an option for me. And it was hardly negotiable. I would not do this after marriage, and I definitely would not accept living with his parents, nor would I like to live close to them, nor would I accept their dropping in every now and then when we were dating. I don't think there is anything unreasonable about my demands, and when we first started dating and talking about living together, my husband and I were very clear about these things, and he agreed. As long as he agrees, I don't see why anyone else should have a negative attitude about it. He has also been considering moving out, but the only thing stopping him is his mother's wish for the family to live together, or at least close enough to get together on weekends or alternate days. So far she has managed to do that. My husband has an older sister who got married and had a daughter. She moved out of the family home because of space issues, but just moved across the street, and they see each other every other day. So I think Sandra feels that this is the only normal way to get along, and my thoughts are unreasonable because she is used to having her children around her all the time. But my husband prefers to live separately from me and away from his family, because he grew up without any privacy, and now he treasures space very much. So my husband and I are very satisfied with the current living arrangements, but I know Sandra thinks I'm responsible for this, and perhaps she feels it's her son who doesn't want to live with his family anymore. This is the only reason I can think of why Sandra doesn't like me, because apart from that I've always been very friendly with my husband's family and tried to integrate into his family as much as I could. But apparently that wasn't enough, because a few days ago Sandra told me that she still doesn't consider me part of her family, even though I only married her son a few months ago, and we've been planning a family holiday for months, and I've been actively involved in it. Usually, these things are paid for by my husband's parents, and it is never a problem for them because they are quite well off. I assumed it would be the same this time, as my husband had told me we didn't need to worry about money in advance. I personally don't mind paying for myself, but I had been told previously that I didn't need to, so it came as a shock when Sandra asked me to sit down the day before we were due to go on holiday and told me I would need to pay for myself. She invited me over to discuss something about the trip, and I went alone because my husband had to finish work before taking his vacation. She then told me that this was a family vacation, so she and her husband would cover all the costs every year, but unfortunately they didn't consider me family yet because they felt they didn't know me well enough. So she hoped I would pay for my own expenses without making a fuss because that would ruin the atmosphere of the vacation, and she didn't want to mess it up from the start. Mess it up. She didn't let it go at that, but decided to make things worse. She told me that the reason she didn't consider me close enough to her to call family was because she wasn't like her son-in-law. She rarely saw me and my husband because we didn't visit as often as the others, which is why she didn't feel like I was part of the family yet. Obviously, her words hurt me because I felt I had tried to get along with his family, even though Sandra had made it clear to me that she didn't exactly approve of me, and she had always led me to believe that by involving me in holiday plans, I had eventually become part of the family. She could have told me frankly from the beginning, and I would have accepted it. But on the very day we were supposed to leave, it seemed unnecessarily cruel and mean. But I tried to hide my feelings and act as if I didn't care. I understood, but deep down I was actually very sad. I didn't want to say anything until I had discussed the matter with my husband, Because I didn't want to react quickly and let anger take over, so I told her it was okay. I understood her point of view, so I would pay for my own meal. She was a little surprised when I told her everything was okay, and I knew it wasn't the reaction she had hoped for. But instead of continuing the conversation, I went straight home. When I got home, I did my best not to cry, but I tried to stay calm and explain everything to my husband. He could see that I was clearly upset and asked me what had happened at his mother's house. He was very angry and told me that he intended to cancel the holiday we were on because he didn't want to spend any more time with his mother after the way she had insulted me. Then I told him that I had long suspected that she didn't like me, but I had never mentioned it because it was just a stupid theory I used to explain why she was always so cold towards me. But now I was beginning to think that it wasn't groundless after all and that there might be something in it. I explained to him that his mother's attitude towards me had changed after he moved in with me, and that she had been cold towards me ever since. She also said that because I didn't visit them often, I wasn't close enough to be considered family. When I told him all this, he said it was probably true because he had always known that family was important to his mother, and she had wanted him to live nearby at least. She had been very upset when he first told her he was moving out to live with me, and he hadn't wanted to rent a place closer to home because he needed his own private space. Although Sandra didn't show it at the time, she probably blamed me for this and harbored a grudge, which explains her behavior, but it still doesn't excuse her for being so cruel to me and trying to humiliate me before we set off on holiday. I felt terrible that day. While talking with my husband, I decided that canceling the holiday and telling her that wasn't good enough because I wanted her to feel as bad as I did. So my husband and I decided to go ahead with their plans and meet them at the airport the next day. But instead of accompanying them, we would fly somewhere else and leave them at the airport. When they realized what had happened, it was too late. We had already gone somewhere else. It was a foolproof plan. We followed it to the letter and were back in Sandlet the next day. We went to the airport to pick them up as planned, and then made an excuse to go take some photos and disappeared. They didn't suspect a thing because they were too busy chatting away. So we walked over to the counter and bought 2 tickets for the first flight to the place we wanted to go most, and ended up choosing San Francisco. Now that we're here, it's really funny. We were supposed to go to Miami, but I prefer it here because it's just my husband and I, and there's no one here who doesn't like me. Of course, when we bought the tickets and got on the plane, his family realized something was wrong and tried to contact us several times and even sent us a text message, but we ignored it all. Luckily, the airport was huge and they didn't manage to find us in time to stop us or question us. We arrived at our destination without a hitch, and as soon as the plane landed, we finally decided to contact them. My husband told the family the truth in a text message, telling them what Sandra had said to me the day before, and that since this was a family vacation and I was not a family member, we had decided it would be best for all of us not to get involved. Out of respect for her, we had thought that Sandra would be angry with us, and perhaps my father-in-law, but we had not expected the whole family to turn against us. Everyone seemed very angry because we had left them at the airport, and they had been so worried, but they had still boarded the plane. Despite this, I still don't understand why they were so angry. They told us that it was irresponsible and selfish of us to disappear without a word and leave them worried sick. They were especially upset with me because they felt that Sandra's words were not enough to make me take extreme action. They felt that I should never have expected them to take my place on the family holiday, and that I should not have offered to pay for it myself, but rather assumed that I could go with him for free, because they felt that I did not make an effort to really integrate into their lives. They said that I never tried to join them for their weekly family dinners, and I didn't even keep in touch with them online and chat with them every day. They obviously felt that I didn't have time for them, and while they respected that, they couldn't allow me to take advantage of them like I was taking advantage of the bank. That's why Sandra felt the need to clarify that they would not pay for my vacation because I didn't make an effort to get along with them, and I didn't even offer to pay for myself. I felt insulted because I earned my own money and would never expect someone to pay for me. They implied that I was self-centered, which made me very unhappy. I told them that their expectations were completely unrealistic and even meaningless. They claimed to have dinner together every week, but in reality it was once every other day. They expected my husband and I to drive to their house after work and have dinner with them, which was completely unfair. We wanted some privacy, but we still tried our best to visit them at least once every 1 to 2 weeks so that they wouldn't feel sad. And this situation already existed before we got married. I feel that they completely ignore this and deliberately make me feel wrong, when in fact I'm not and I know it. So I remind them that I do my best to fit in with their family, and if that's not enough, then there's not much more my husband and I can do now. They get angry and say that we're being immature and selfishly ruining their holidays. Ada and my husband travels separately from his family editor. I feel the need to clarify because many comments accuse me of isolating my husband, which is a very serious accusation for Levy. I would like to say that it is not just me who thinks that it is a bit excessive and unnecessary for a family to stay together. No family needs to get together for lunch and dinner every other day. It is not as good as living together. If you just go and see them every day, what is the point of moving away? Away from them if he just goes and sees them every day, which is what my husband wants, not just me. We both decided to live not far from them and try to go to his family's house as little as possible, maybe once a week. They are not happy about it, but it is what we both want. It wasn't a decision I made alone, so I think it's unfair for everyone to blame me for it. That's exactly what his family is doing. Anyway, I don't need people on Reddit to point fingers at me. The point is, my husband is as much a part of this decision as I am, and neither of us wants to see his family every other day. As for them saying I expected them to pay for my flights and take me on holiday when I didn't even try to really get to know them and be part of the family, I don't think any of that is true. I don't expect them or feel they are entitled to pay for my holidays. If they had told me from the start they expected me to pay for my own holidays, I would have agreed or I wouldn't have gone. But the day before the holiday, Sandra made me sit down and told me they weren't going to pay for me as I wasn't family. This was premeditated and deliberately meant to upset me. I have no problem paying for my own holiday. As I mentioned above, they had unreasonable expectations, but I didn't. Yes, I really tried hard to get along with them. They said I didn't want to be part of the family just because I wasn't going to their house every other day. This is ridiculous. I did try really hard to make them like me. I thought it was just Sandra who didn't approve of me, but it turns out none of them liked me as much as I thought they did, which is awful. Update. My husband and I are still on vacation, but his family hates me. I realize that they are mad at me because I don't want to live with them, which is unreasonable. I don't need to sacrifice my personal space and privacy to please them. If they want to be mad at me, fine, they can keep being mad, but I wish they wouldn't make a point of letting us know they're mad because we know we don't care and they really need to come to terms with that. Just yesterday they decided to text me because texting my husband didn't work, and tell me that no matter what I tried to do to their family, it would fail because their bond is too strong for someone like me to break. I think they are making a big deal out of nothing because in my opinion, I have not done anything to destroy their relationship. It is they who have insulted me, so my husband and I decided to separate from them again. They don't realize that my husband also has free will, and I cannot force him to do anything he doesn't want to do. So if we decided to go on holiday separately and away from them, it was because my husband felt the same way. I know it's hard for them to accept, but it's the truth. I texted them to say that my husband didn't want to go on holiday with them, and that it was a mutual decision, and they were being really stupid to blame me. I also told them that if they had been nicer to me instead of being so horrible, maybe my husband wouldn't have wanted to separate from them at all, so if they wanted to blame someone, they should blame themselves. Sandra kept sending me these texts, but I knew the whole family agreed with her. They all agreed that I somehow controlled my husband and forced him to break with his family. I didn't want to communicate with her or anyone else in his family, so after I had said everything I wanted to tell them, I decided to block them all and concentrate on my holiday, because I didn't want to waste any more time. I told my husband about the text messages, and he told me to leave it alone because it was useless to explain anything to them. They just talk among themselves and never consider that we just want to live a normal life, which is impossible if we live with them or even near them. They have also been making a fuss about everything recently, so we returned from holiday last night and it was really fun for a few days, but now the holiday is over and we have to get back to work. We had hoped for a quiet week when we got back, but that's not going to happen because his family is also back today. We didn't contact his family while we were on holiday because we blocked them on every social media platform and also blocked their phone number. They don't know where we are, so they can't contact us. Life away from them and the drama has been calm, but now we're back and they're back too, and they can't wait to contact us just to create drama. We had just returned home from a long day and heard someone ringing the doorbell. We knew it was her family before we opened the door. And sure enough, Sandra was standing there. We didn't want her to come in and told her we were tired from work and didn't want to talk to her, but she pushed past us and went into the living room. I was really angry and told her that I wanted her to leave my house because her attitude towards me before the holidays was completely unacceptable. I had nothing to say to her and didn't want to hear anything from her because I knew she would just blame everything on me. But she told me to shut up and said that she wasn't here to talk to me, but to her son, so I had to be quiet. I didn't like her attitude towards me, so I told her that you can't talk to me like that, especially since she's in my house. That was all I said, and it made her very angry because she started yelling at me furiously, accusing me of many things, such as trying to isolate her son, trying to belittle her in front of him, and making him lose respect for her. She told me that she always knew this day would come because I have always been a home wrecker, and that I could not stand to see my husband close to his family because it would only mean less control over him. She called me crazy and said that I had no right to interfere to save her son before it was too late, because I was not part of her family. I told her that I was glad that I was not part of her family because it seemed to me that she would rather run a cult than have a family. When I said that, she completely lost it and almost pounced on me. Before I knew it, she had grabbed me by the hair and was physically attacking me. It took my husband only a few seconds to separate us and throw her out of the house. Even after she was thrown out of the house, she kept screaming at me and insulting me with some very degrading words that I don't even want to mention here because they are really too offensive. I was so shocked that I waited a few seconds to calm down, and then called the police with my husband to get her out of our house. My husband threw her out of the house, and she remained in the front yard, screaming that I was ruining her family, but she would not let that happen. She did not stop screaming until the police finally arrived on the scene, and then she began begging us not to press charges, but it was too late. My husband and I had made up our minds that we would not let this go easily. I mean, she had physically attacked me, so I could not just let it go because then she would do it again next time. My husband and I filed a lawsuit against her. Since she was not actually seriously injured, they may let her off lightly, but at least it will be on record. She was taken away, and at the time she was crying uncontrollably, which was crazy because just seconds before she was yelling at us and threatening us. After that, my husband and I decided to start looking for a lawyer in order to apply for a restraining order against her, because she was obviously mentally ill and I didn't want to take any chances. We also started thinking about moving, something we have been considering for a while, because it is not very convenient for my husband here, and we want to move somewhere close to both our offices. We want to do everything we can to make sure she never gets anywhere near us again, and neither does his family. It's been a few hours since her arrest, and his family has not tried to contact us yet, but I know they will be very upset about this, and it may even cost him his inheritance, but it was all worth it because Sandra needed to be brought down. I have no regrets calling her a cult leader, and then arresting her for assaulting me. She got exactly what she deserved. Update 3. We got a restraining order against Sandra, and it's been a few days since then. The past 2 weeks have been very busy for both of us, as we have to start looking for a new house to move into and deal with the dramatic events that have ensued, not to mention the restraining order and court appearances. But now I can. First of all, Sandra was only sentenced to community service because I was not seriously injured, but her husband's family decided to make a big deal out of it and pretend that she was the victim, when she had only hurt herself. They told every family member they could find how I had incited Sandra and that was why she had attacked me. But when my reaction was as I had hoped, we called the police and had her arrested. They claimed it was all planned, that we were hell-bent on provoking Sandra into attacking us, so we could have an excuse to get her into trouble. It didn't make sense to anyone who was attacked, but they chose to believe the story, and fortunately not many people did, and most of them sided with us, so they disowned my husband's family. What I said about Sandra wanting to run a cult instead of a family and her expectations being too high and a bit unhealthy was true. I'm glad I had the opportunity to say it to her face because she needs to know she's crazy, and I'd be happy to say it to her again if I get the chance, even if it means she'll attack me again because it's totally worth it, but the chances of us seeing each other again anytime soon are slim, because of the restraining order, and because my husband and I moved a few days ago, and they have no idea where to find us now and since we've been on holiday, they've blocked us from all social media, so honestly it's not something we're concerned about. He's more relieved than I am because he once said that being with his family almost suffocated him, and I can see why. If my parents had been like that, giving me no privacy or space of my own, I probably would have felt the same way. I think my family, including my husband, are really lucky.